Hi, everyone from Internet Worlds and beyond. Welcome to the Atlanta Low Brass Academy. My name is not Nicholas's iPad. My name is Nick Collins, and I am one of the co-directors of the Atlanta Low Brass Academy. And I'm also the Tuba representative as well. So we're also joined here with co-director and Euphonium representative, Mr. Andrew Berry. And we have our trombone representative, Mr. Sam Boger. Hello. And we are also joined by a man who needs no introduction. He is the former professor of tuba and euphonium at UGA, now the professor of tuba and euphonium at Michigan, University of Michigan. So welcome, Mr. David Zerkel.
Happy to be here.
All right, so the topic, yes, welcome. The topic of today is college auditions and music in college and as a career as well, and also some maybe specifics about Mr. Zerkel, your own experience as both as a student and as a current professor as well.
Sure.
So Sam, I know you have a few questions for Mr. Zerkel about himself.
Yes. So Professor Zerkel, when growing up as a child, a lot of us have a lot of different inspirations and kind of influence as to what kind of draws us to music. And I'm just curious, for you as a child growing up, did you know you wanted to do music, or was it kind of something that, for you, it kind of grew later on in life once it got introduced to you at a later time, like middle school or high school like that?
Oh yeah, I had no idea when I was really little. I mean, I wanted to be a lot of things when I was really little. I wanted to be a herpetologist, who's somebody who studies snakes. I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to be a lot of things, but I didn't really get into tuba till the seventh grade. I started music in the fifth grade. I had an older brother who I idolized, and he played the trumpet. And then when he got to high school, he quit the trumpet in favor of like football and girls. And so we had this trumpet in our coat closet in the front of our house, and I waited for the day where I could start taking trumpet at school. And so in fifth grade, the time came, and I decided I wanted to do the trumpet, and it was good. I enjoyed it, but I was just kind of a middle of the pack trumpet player. And then in the seventh grade, went to see the family orthodontist, and he said, "Yeah, you need braces." And I went back and told the band director. He said, "Well, you're not going to be able to play the trumpet anymore, so why don't we switch you to tuba?" And I said, "No, I really want to play the baritone. I really want to play euphonium." And he goes, we don't need any euphonium players. We need tuba players." And I think that's how a lot of tuba players are born. Whenever I do a clinic somewhere, I ask for a show of hands for who started on tuba, and it's usually about half. And I'm always surprised that it's that many, because a lot of people start on something else. Nick, what did you start on?
I started on trombone in fourth grade, and then moved up to the baritone, and then euphonium, and then in seventh grade got,
You evolved.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, so anyway, I really loved playing in bands at school, and it was at a time in high school. I grew up in a kind of rural cow town in Western Maryland, and high school wasn't all that taxing back in those days. You could or could not take a foreign language. It didn't matter. You had to do 4 Englishes and 3 social studies and 2 maths. And so I found that the further I went in school, the more music classes I could schedule in my day. And so I think by the time I was a senior, I was, doing concert band and jazz band and a music theory course, and then the select choral ensemble at school. So I was like fully immersed, and so by the time I was a senior, I said, well, this is really what I'm good at. I decided I'd be serious about it at that point. But I didn't have any private lessons in high school. My first private lesson was when I went off to college. So
yeah, we have a good friend, Mike, who is in the same boat. He just did a bunch of music stuff in high school. He never took a private lesson before college. And, now he's a band director and a killer euphonium player, which I think is so cool that you don't have to be this like super godly talented student in high school in order to, one that's already been taking lessons and doing all state. You can go into it and with hard work you can really be really successful.
I did all state in Maryland, and it was fun. I never got to first chair, but I was an all state band with Velvet Brown in Maryland. So
Wow.
she sat in front of me. She kind of still sits in front of me, so it's okay. But it was a great experience, and I remember that being an eye-opening experience when I did all-state band and I heard like what an oboe sounded like and what a bassoon really sounded like. It was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And so that was a moment where I was like, oh, these are my people. So it was fun in that way.
That's awesome.
All right, Sam, do you have any more intro questions for Mr. Zerkel or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, so like once you got into, I guess like once you got pursuant of music in high school, I guess you could tell us a little bit more about like, I guess like where'd you go for undergrad and kind of your walk of life that took you from, college wanting to be a music major to where you are currently.
Yeah, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I when I was auditioning for colleges, here's how it went. I my guidance counselor didn't like me because I was just kind of a meh student, and I took all these music courses, and she didn't like that at all. So I went and she said, "Well, where are you applying?" And I shot down my list of schools, and I said, and Peabody Conservatory. And she said, "No, you have to be good to get into Peabody." So that was my encouragement from my high school guidance counselor. But Peabody was the only school that I applied to on tuba. All the other schools I applied to was for jazz trombone. I applied to Berklee School of Music in Boston. Towson State was a great jazz program in the state of Maryland. When I grew up, Hank Levy was the band director there, the jazz band director there, and it was kind of the for public universities in Maryland, it was kind of the place to go for music ed. But I ended up going to Peabody. I got acceptances at places, and my dad said, we're sat at the table and talked about it. He said, I really think I'd prefer you going to classical music rather than jazz. And I said, okay. And I'm glad I did. I mean, I was kind of a poser as a jazz player. I mean, I could play style all day long, and I could, play in big band and have it make a lot of sense. But if I had to, I couldn't improvise my way out of a wet paper bag. And so, that's still a challenge for me a little bit. So I think I made the right call. And so I went to Peabody and I studied with Dave Burgunier, who is the tuba player in the National Symphony. And he was a great teacher for me, and mostly an emphasis on making good music. So I did that, and then had a couple very good experiences at Peabody that kept me encouraged and moving forward. And then when I got out, I was graduating, and I didn't have a plan for next year, so I went through, this is before the internet, and so we had a graduate assistantship box in our placement office, and so I just went through to see who was offering music TAs or tuba TAs, and there was a school called Illinois State University, and I knew of Illinois State University because at that time Rex Martin had just graduated from Illinois State. And this was at the time that he was doing a lot of playing for Mr. Jacobs in Chicago. And so he kind of went directly from the middle of a cornfield in Illinois to Chicago and got like thrown into the deep end of the pool. And I thought, well, if the teacher at ISU is good enough for Rex Martin, he's good enough for me. And so I went out there, sight unseen. My audition was a cassette tape that he listened to and accepted me that way. And went out there sight unseen. I loved my teacher. He was like the most decent and kind and vivacious man I've ever met in my life. But he wasn't doing a lot for my tuba playing. Ed Livingston was his name, great guy. And he was very funny. He said, David, it's time I do the same for you that I did for Rex. I'm going to call Mr. Jacobs and line up a lesson for you. And I said, Ed, I don't have any money to pay for that lesson. He said, don't worry. He said, I'll pay for the lesson. I'll put you on the train to get you up to Chicago. I'll throw some pizza money in your hand. Do you have somebody you could stay with? And I had a Peabody buddy who was up there. And so sure enough, he did all those things and put me up. Then I went and had a lesson with Arnold Jacobs in the Fine Arts Building in Chicago. And I hate to sound like a nerd, a brass player nerd, but it really did change my life. You know, it was like, it was eye-opening. But I knew I wasn't going to stay at Illinois State, and so I left. And then I took a job working in a sheet metal factory, you know, and I did that for 4 months. Every day when I'd eat my lunch at the sheet metal factory, out of my lunch bucket, I'd go, damn it, I wish I would have kept that education degree, because I would still be doing music in some way. So anyway, but what passes next is that there was an opening in the United States Army Field Band, and I never saw myself doing a military band, but both Ed Livingston and Dave Burgunier started their career in the field band, and they ran down the long list of people who also started in the field band, like Ron Bishop from the Cleveland Orchestra and Ev Gilmore from the Dallas Symphony, and Bob Tucci, and there was a whole litany of great players that started in the field band. And I said, well, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And so I did basic training and went into the field band, loved it. There was a lot of travel. It was about 120 days of travel a year. And right around the time of my reenlistment time, we were expecting our first child. And I thought, wow, if I did 20 years in this band, I would miss 7 years of my child's life. And I thought, I don't know if I can do that. And so there was an opening in the Army Band downtown in Washington, D.C., and I went and took that audition and won that, essentially trading my bus seat for a sousaphone. Because when I was at the Army Band for the next 8 years, my job was 99% sousaphone. And so I did that, and I was itchy to get out and do something else, and I took every orchestral audition I could. Sometimes came very close, sometimes didn't come close at all, as it goes on the audition trail. And I started looking into the possibility of college teaching. Now, I did my master's when I was in the band at the University of Maryland, but I didn't have a doctorate started or anything. But some professional experience was able to help me out, and so, ironically, my first college teaching job was at Illinois State to replace my old mentor at Livingston when I was there. So. Did that for 3 years. Then the UGA opening came up, and it seemed like a great opportunity. Great school with the Hope Scholarship, and Fred Mills was on the faculty at the time, and there were a lot of things to like about the job at Georgia. I came down for the interview, and the kids were all smart and talented, and man, I had a great time teaching there. It was wonderful. So. That's the Reader's Digest. That's the Cliff Notes version.
Oh, and you have already, this is my second year at UGA, and so we still have people here who studied with you, and you've left such a great impact here, specifically on the Tuba Youth Studio, but anyone in the brass area knows who you are and what kind of influence you had on the school music. So Michigan is extremely lucky to have you now.
Oh, you're very kind. Those people are all my friends, and they have to say nice things about me. So,
That's great. So Nick, you want to take us a little bit with student auditioning for college?
Yeah. I've got a few. We have a few questions, kind of at the perspective of a student who is maybe a senior in high school, or maybe even younger, and they're just really good at thinking ahead, which some of us were not so great at. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But kind of the biggest question, I think, on a lot of high school students' minds who love band or they love orchestra or chorus or something like that, but they're not sure if music is the right career for them. So, to you, what kind of pushes you in that direction and makes you think that music would be the right career for someone? Or how would you guide them through that kind of question?
Do you like music? I mean, is one of the big questions, and I always ask them if they're thinking of majoring in anything else at the audition, and then I always ask them at the audition. Well, my first question, it's kind of a silly question, but it's an icebreaker with the students. I always say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I keep expecting someone to say a fireman or a lion tamer or something, but they all invariably say, I want to be a tuba player in a symphony orchestra. And then it's like, okay, well, that's, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer about this, but it's just there are just so few opportunities. And when I ask them about what their degree pursuit is going to be, and I have all this information because it's on their profile, but I say, well, what's your plan for the major? Is it going to be music ed, or is it going to be performance, or is it going to be a Bachelor of Arts degree? And when they say performance, and I especially do this with students who are kind of at the midpoint, and I say, I want to be a performance degree. I say, well, here's the deal. If I accept you as a performance degree or as a performance major, the idea is that by the time you leave here in 4 years, you're playing me under the table, because I represent the lowest form of threat that you're going to see on the audition trail when you go out to apply for jobs. And a lot of them go gulp, but some of them go, okay. And I always say, I've had about a dozen students that have passed me, and as a teacher, nothing makes me happier than to have a student play me under the table. And I have lots of experience of students playing me under the table, trust me. Shipes is a perfect example of that. The other thing, if students are ambivalent about doing music, and this sounds like really weird advice coming from somebody who does this for a living, but my thoughts sometimes are, if you can do something else, do that. You can always do music. You can always do music through your years of college, whether it's marching band or whether it's doing the audition pool for all the big ensembles at the school. You don't have to be a music major to play in these ensembles. But my thing was, there wasn't anything else I could do. I felt like music was something that I had to do. And what I want is a student to say to me, music is something that I have to do, because it's at my very core. It's really what I want to do. It's very tough these days, because I think people tend to think of university now less as a broad life education or an institution where you go to learn how to learn and to learn as many things and find yourself as you can. I think that the view on colleges now is that it's vocational education. And I think that that's how mom and dad, who are paying the tuition bill, want to see it. And so I think a lot of times there's a lot of resistance from parents to give a green light for their kids to go into music. And when you have a supportive group of parents or a supportive set of parents who are like, no, this is what they want to do, and they understand the risks, but this is what they want to do, that I'm always happy to hear that. But I think it's funny now, because I think it's a different scene than it was 20 years ago. I think there are fewer people majoring in music and applying to major in music now than there were 20 years ago, just because I think society has turned such a corner where they're thinking about, where am I going to be employed the day that I get out of school? And that music is uncertain in that regard. So.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, because especially going through my undergrad, I kind of, and changing from, I came in as an education major, and I knew I loved band, and I made me want to be a band director. I loved all the marching band stuff. I was super into that. And then I found, a different way into performance. You kind of, you can, it's okay to sometimes not know exactly what you want to do with music. There's no one route you can take. They're there. They exist. People follow them for 8 years or 7 years, however long they're in school, 9 years, I guess. But you don't have to. And an interesting thing that I've been telling some students who have had, about majoring in music is I'm saying, you kind of have to be an entrepreneur a little bit for yourself. Like that's just really important, a really important thing to do, especially getting through your undergrad and things like that. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting perspective on that for sure.
Yeah, no, the world is a different place than it was when I was in college. There was no online marketing. There was no way to sell yourself online by having a blog or to post YouTube videos. None of that existed, and so it was a very traditional work hard and then go take your hard knocks on the audition trail. And now I think there are so many different ways to get music out into the world that the broader that a student thinks about what their prospects are as far as piecing together, and I don't want to say piecing together a living, but but creating a path to, as Lance LeDuc and Andrew Hitt say, to eat food and sleep inside. You know, I think that there are a lot more ways to do it than there were in the past. I think the common denominator is, though, you still have to be good. There's that sometimes you see people who are slick and all style and no substance, and the bottom line is you still have to be good. And so you can pimp yourself as hard as you want to, but if the product isn't there, it's that's going to be problematic. So.
Well, that kind of gets me into another question. So, I mean, in my personal experience, I never made all state. I think I made district honor band once, or maybe a couple of times, but I could never do it because I had other marching band things going on during our indoor drumline things going on. But I know that for a student who's maybe a senior in high school who has that, I need to do music kind of thing, and they're in a position where maybe they're not first chair in their band, or maybe they never made all state and something like that. What would you say to a student maybe in that kind of position?
Sometimes it's just a matter of they haven't had the right opportunities. And so when I'm listening to a student in an audition, I'm a blank slate. I have no expectations of what to expect, and my mind is wide open. And so there have been students that I've encountered that 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 were not on my radar at all, just because I didn't know them through the usual GMEA or through JamFest or through other things, who I had no aware of, and then I'd hear them at auditions and go, "Holy moly! I mean, that's really good." And so to that student, I would say whether your resume is blank as a student doesn't matter as much as how you play at the audition and how you present yourself at the audition in terms of being serious about the pursuit of studying music. I always tell students, but when I'm talking about this, I always say the playing is really important. Play stuff that you play well. Don't play material that you think will impress somebody. Play something that you can actually nail. And I don't care if that's the Haddad Suite, or as a matter of fact, those are still the pieces, even at Michigan, those are still the pieces that I recommend for incoming high school students, because I don't want a high school student coming in and trying to play the John Williams concerto, because that's like frosting the cake before it's baked. They might be able to play it, but they don't really have the skills that you really need to really play it and to really understand it. But I think sometimes people say, well, no, I want to play the hardest thing, the Cosma. The number of high school kids that come in with the Cosma concerto, it's like, you're not ready to play this piece. And so play something that you can play. And then where I was, sorry, that was a long walk for a short drink. The other thing that I would tells kids is that ask questions. Be prepared to talk about yourself when you're auditioning for colleges, because we're not just recruiting you, the instrumentalist, we're recruiting you, the human being, and so here's a here's a big turnoff for me at auditions. So, do you have any questions for me? No, I'm good. It's like, okay, that's what's the book? She's just not that into you, and so it's that whole idea. If they don't come armed with questions about what the program is like or what to expect, I know they're not all that serious. So, my advice for a student would be present yourself well as a human being and do ask questions, because that's a way that you can demonstrate your interest in the program.
Oh yeah, that's really great. I think the point that you and Nick made about it's a lot more than just being good at your instrument. It's who you are as a person. It's your ambitions. It's your goals. And if you go into music school, like if you're a high school student and you apply, you get into music school, and whether it's music ed, performance theory, whatever, if you're going into it, you're going into a lot more than just getting good at an instrument or something. And I feel like I didn't know that going into it. I mean, even though both of my parents got their music ed degrees, they both got their bachelor's and master's in music ed. And so they, exposed me to music, classical music as a young kid. But even me going into college, I really wasn't expecting what it was going to be. I feel like my first year, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm just having a good time playing music. And then sophomore, junior, senior year, it's like really a smack in the face that it's a lot more than just that. But I think it takes, like I said, that extra level of dedication and just knowing that, one, this is what you want to do, but also two, knowing, that you can do it. And it takes a little bit of self-motivation too, because music school will bear down on you. It'll kick you in the butt, and it'll leave you bleeding, but it's so possible for anyone to do it if they have the right dedication and the right drive to be successful at it.
Yeah, that always cracks me up. Oh, what's your major? I'm a music major. Oh, that sounds like fun. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah. No, it's a full-time job. And a question that I will frequently ask students is, do you like to practice? And if they say no, I really don't like to practice, it's like, yeah, maybe this isn't your thing, because you have to. I mean, look, talent is one thing. It's great to be naturally talented. It's really great, but I will take somebody who works hard over somebody who's really talented
Yeah.
every day of the week, because because those people will get better, and the people who just rest on what they can do with their own ability, um, is that story ends the same way every time, of somebody not meeting their potential because they didn't try. Nick, I think you're a great example for somebody who didn't get into all-state band as a high school kid. I mean, hearing you play now, it's like if you do work, good things happen. Good things happen, and that is really it. I tell students also, it's not where you go to study, it's not who you study with, it's what you do when you are there. And Sam, I mean, I think of the culture of the trombone studio at Columbus, and he's created something really awesome. He's really created a great program down there where people get stuff done, and they're surrounded by people who are getting stuff done. And, people are inspired, I'm, I, I shouldn't tell this story. My stepdaughter has just started as a freshman at Michigan, and she's finding her way around a little bit. And yeah, this story is going the wrong direction. But it's the whole idea. which came back for one weekend waxing elegant about the stuff that's going on at school and the sounds that she's hearing in the school of music. And I made the comment to her. I said, "Yeah, talent is an aphrodisiac, isn't it?" And she said, "Absolutely, absolutely." And so when you get to a culture where there's stuff going on, it doesn't need to be an aphrodisiac in that sense of the word, but it's just the whole idea of when you're around people who are achieving at a very high level, you go, "Oh, that was me when I got to Peabody. I didn't know anything when I got to Peabody." And then I got around a bunch of people who knew more than I did, and I was like, "Oh, I got to catch up." And I could catch up, but I chose to catch up. I could have said, "Oh, woe is me. I'm so dumb. I'm this dumb hick from Western Maryland, and I guess I'm screwed." No, every time somebody said a composer that I didn't know, I went to the record library and listened to a piece by that composer. And so it's all about rolling up your sleeves and doing the work. It's You can succeed from anywhere as long as you're doing the work, you know? So
100%. I really love that point you just made, and um, kind of going back to another idea. I lost my train of thought for a little bit, but just
sorry, I
that
just
was
had an idea.
no, I lost my train of thought. But no, I think those are all really amazing points. And especially just knowing that you can do whatever you want to do, like that last point you made, as long as you're dedicated and everything like that. There's not a ton of jobs open in music in general. I think there are more jobs now for like music technology and music business that, when people, like middle schoolers and high schoolers, I think if what was available now was available like 10 years ago when I was in middle school and high school, I think I would have went that route, honestly, like going into music technology or business, just because I love technology. That's what my dad did, and it's just a thriving industry right now. But there's as brass players, most of our niche is into classical music and jazz, and there's still something really beautiful about that I think we should continue to inspire kids to do, because it's not a dying art, but it's few and far between of like who's playing classical, tuba or classical trombone. And especially with just what is going on with social media today, I think it's important that we still encourage kids to go into classical music, as hard
Yeah,
as it is.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not willing to say that classical music is done. I think that things run in cycles. I think that no matter what you do in music, I always tell the story at Illinois State. It was in the town of Bloomington Normal, Illinois, and that's corporate headquarters for State Farm. And State Farm corporate used to love to hire ISU music major graduates because they knew that musicians were disciplined. They knew that they were creative and could think outside of the box. They knew that they were reliable, and they knew that they could work with other people. And so these are all skills that we're developing as musicians, and they are things that are applicable to the outside world. And so I don't think I think studying music rounds the human being in a lot of in a ways that studying business might not. I mean, I think it does force us to be creative and to work well with other people and to be responsible, knowing that if your part is missing or if you don't show up to rehearsal, you're letting 80 other people down, you know? And so I think that those are all traits that will carry you on in life, you know? So
Definitely. And so to kind of take it into our last little portion of this discussion, um, you talked a lot about your experiences as a student going through college and eventually getting into where you are now, and to where you're at now, where you're on, a panel, kind of helping decide which of these kids is going to, start a career or continue a career in music in my studio in my school. As someone who I know you don't have all the decision, as we've talked about with certain schools. Sometimes things are out of your control. But what in the decisions that you have and the power that you have, what are you thinking as a professor when you're sitting in the audition hall and you're having 10 students come up, but you can only have one? What specifically are you trying to pick out from these students that you will say that student will be really successful?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great question, and it's really hard. I mean, like my audition experience here last year, COVID was a weird year, but I think for graduate students, I think it made auditioning for grad schools a lot easier, because you didn't have to travel, and so the number of graduate auditions was up, and and frankly, I would have loved to have the top 12 tuba players that I listened to I would have loved to have every single one of them at the school, but there are only so many slots, and the school's only going to fund so many people. So what I'm looking for, and this is what just advice, whether you're auditioning for a grad school or for undergrad, what are the things that are important? Do you make a beautiful sound on your instrument? Number one. Do you have something to say when you play your instrument, or are you just playing correctly? Can you convey an idea? Can you bring that across? Do you demonstrate in the repertoire that you've chosen for your audition, do you demonstrate that you have control over the instrument that's reasonably expected for a high school senior or for a graduating college student? And then finally, at the interview, it's like, are you a good human being? I mean, and I've, without going into too much detail, I've had auditions in the past where I thought that was a great audition. I'll tell this story. All players will remain anonymous. I had a student audition at UGA for the tuba graduate assistantship, and he had a lesson with me, which was great. He played his audition, went really well. We had studio class the next period, and he said, "Can I come to studio class?" And I said, "I would love that." And so I came down to studio class, and the studio class was 3 people got up and played, and the way that we've traditionally done it is students lead the discussion in studio class, and so player number 1 gets up to play and plays pretty well, and so the studio goes around and people make their comments, and my visitor raises his hand and says, "Can I make a comment?" And I was like, "This is great. Yeah, please." That was boring. And I was like, "Okay, check please." And so I knew at that moment that he was no longer a candidate, because who goes to be a guest in somebody else's house and then insults the inhabitants of the house? And so, I think, so the interview portion where I get to talk to people and get to know where they are and where they've come from and what their goals are, and to see really if their goals line up with what I perceive with where they are as a player. One of my favorite questions to ask in every audition scenario is, what do you think is the best thing about your playing? And what do you think is the part of your playing that needs the most help? And I can tell a lot about a student from how they answer that question based on how they've just played. So if they've just played with horrible rhythm and they say, I think my time is really good, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't match up with my experience of the audition. So kind of being kind of woke enough about your own strengths and weaknesses is a good sign, and so when students don't exhibit that, it's like, okay, that's a little cause for worry. So but it's interesting because a lot of students have the same questions about what is it like, and a lot of times it's like, well, what's the money situation? And what students need to realize is that if it were up to us, we'd be throwing buckets of money at them to come to school. It's very rarely is, no, never, let's say, is the professor like in charge of the financial decisions that go into this. At UGA, we had a little tiny bucket of money, but I knew every dollar that I was spending or that I was offering. Okay. At Michigan, I don't know what size my bucket of money is. I turned in a rank list of people, and then the admissions office looks at their financial profile, and they make every dollar decision that goes out for the students. Now, does that work to our advantage? Yes, in some ways, but even at the University of Michigan, I'm finding that it's really become a little bit of a wherever the student gets the biggest stroke is where they're going to go, you know, and college is expensive and music school is expensive for an unknown result when you get done. And so to the students who follow the money, I understand. I get it. I understand that decision totally because the money is real. When you start paying back the loans, the money is real. It's real, okay? But at the same time, I always hope that students say, if there's a way to do this, and I know that this is the best place for me to be for my growth, I'm going to try and figure out a way to make that happen. That's maybe Pollyannish a little bit. I think really it comes down to the expense many of the times, but we have no control over that. And every good student we want to hear, we want a scholarship. And I think that students don't think that professors think that way, but professors do think that way. You know, we wish we could do it, but there are things that are out of our hands, and some schools are really tight with money, or they just don't have the resources to offer, and then at other schools they have a ton of resources to offer, and many times I lose students to those schools that have tons of resources, and that's just the reality of it all. You know, I talk to DeMondre about this frequently because I think Indiana's in a similar boat where they're not throwing large buckets of money at anybody. And he says, DeMondre's a wonderful guy, a very good friend of mine. But he's like, yeah, I just can't get wrapped up in that. I just can't get wrapped up in the idea of we have to compete dollar for dollar with every school. But I do think it's kind of the reality that kids look at these days. So.
Yeah, even for me, as I'm, I'm submitting military band auditions as well as auditions for my DMA. As much as I don't want it to be a factor, it is.
Absolutely.
It is, and I have to consider it. And luckily, the schools I'm looking at, they've got great options. But at the end of the day, it comes down to it, and it's not great, but it's life as a music major.
I get it. And as a kid who grew up with very modest means, I mean, I didn't own my first F tuba till I was 30 years old because of money considerations. I did not have the equipment that I needed till I was 30. Fortunately, I got a job playing professionally when I was 23, so I didn't need an F to get my job. But and my parents would say, it was a lot for them to buy my tuba when I went off to school, and that was a Alexander tuba that cost $3,500, and they would ask me what I want for Christmas every year, and I'd say world peace and an F tuba, and I knew that my likelihood of getting either was about the same, and so I get it, and so, but I'm always amazed at life on the other side sometimes that there are people for whom spending a lot of money on a college education is in their budget. They've planned for this, or they're in a good enough financial position where it's like, yeah, that's not really a major consideration for us. It's like, good for you. You made good decisions in life, you know? So, but it's a thing. It is a thing indeed. You know, well, I don't want to get it. I don't want to get into that. But there are a lot of things that factor into students going or choosing a school, and a lot of it is based on just getting into the school, and for me, no, I'm not going to go there. So anyway, but you know the deal. You know the deal.
Sure.
So, but to any student who may be watching this, if you feel like you have to do music and you want to do music, all I can say is get into the best program that you can for you, and that might not be the same for everyone else. Find a teacher with whom you can resonate, visit the campus, see the campus in action, hear the ensembles play, walk around, see what people are doing, see what the attitude is, and then go to the best place that you can afford for what meets your needs, for what you want to be. And then once you get there, don't look back at, oh, I could have gone here, or I could have gone here, or I could have gone here. Don't look back, put your eyes straight ahead and work hard, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. I often ask the question, and I'll ask you guys, but where did Walter Payton go to college?
Not sure.
It was a tiny school. It was a itty bitty tiny. I feel bad. I ask you that question now. I don't have the answer, but we can Google that. But anyway, it was a tiny little school. But he went on to be one of the greatest running backs in the history of the NFL. And it's not because of where he went to school. It was because of what he did when he went to school. Thank you, Andrew, for looking this up.
This was on duty. Jacksonville State.
Jacksonville State, and where?
Oh wait, no, Jackson State. Sorry.
Jackson State.
Okay.
In Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yep. Football powerhouse. So and that's the thing. When eventually down the road, when you come out from behind the screen, if you played best that day, it didn't matter whether you majored in economics or you majored in chemistry, or you majored in music performance, or you majored in music ed, or you majored in music therapy. At the end of the day, it's like you came out as the winner, and what you majored in didn't matter, or where you went to school didn't matter. That didn't matter at all. It's what you did. And so that would be my message for the kid who's going off to school, is to say, you have to want it and you have to work hard at it. But if you continue to do that and you continue to go on a trajectory where your improvement is constant and you have the right support behind you, that's what matters. That's what matters. It's not so much where you're going to school. So, and there are lots of great options in the state of Georgia now, as far as places to go to school. So, great things happening all over the state. So,
yeah, 100%.
And we all three of us went to school in Georgia. We went to undergrad in Georgia, and were able to find our way as well. And by the great words of those who are teaching in Georgia, and those who we get to hear in the state of Georgia, which is a big deal. Go see the ASO and whatnot and things like that. It's a really big deal, and I think there's a lot in Georgia that Georgia has to offer. And we have people like you who have been there in the past and who are creating more great opportunities, like Dr. Shipes at UGA, and I think there's just going to continue to be more and more as well, and hopefully keep the ball rolling.
Oh, I'm bullish on what I see when I listen to what students are doing now, as opposed to what I was doing when I was 18 years old. It's like the difference is stark. The difference is stark, stark, stark. And so, yeah, I'm encouraged by everything that I see, and the level of playing that's going on is it just continues to rise. It just continues to rise, and as an old fart, I just try and keep up. I try not to embarrass myself in lessons, so
Yeah.
that keeps me young. That keeps me going.
Yeah.
So
And I think attributing to that is technology and a huge point because there's so many resources on YouTube everywhere. You can find resources of whether it's professional recordings or that's part of what we want to do here at the Low Brass Academy is just provide resources for people so they can elevate themselves as people, musicians, instrumentalists. That's what we're all about. And I, like you said, it's just going to get better and better.
yep, and good on you guys for doing it. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's in a world where not everyone is encouraging musicians, whether that's orchestra management or whether that's the concert going public or it's the general antipathy towards the arts in school funding decisions. I think that the kind of, for lack of a better, this is not what you're doing, but the kind of cheerleading that you're doing to keep people very interested in what's going on is important. And I think the service that you're offering and what your plans are for the future of your project, I think that's going to be super beneficial for students down the road.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate your kind words about us.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or Sam or Nick? Any other questions?
No, I feel like I rambled.
No, that's great. That's why we wanted you on here. We wanted
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I don't have anything more to offer. And I will say this to any student who's listening is any musician who thinks that they got where they got without lucky bounces is kidding themselves. And so it's a matter of being at the right place at the right time and being prepared when you find yourself in that place. People people who are well prepared are luckier than other people,
yeah.
you know? And so it's a matter of just landing in the right place and doing everything that you can to be as prepared for the moment that's in front of you as possible, and then doors open. And I always tell students I said, when you're in your 20s, every time your phone rings for a gig, the answer is yes. I don't care if it's playing on the back of a flatbed truck playing Dixieland and it pays 20 bucks. The answer when you're young is yes. And so you get yourself in a position where other people hear you, and then those other people then are in a position to call you when they need somebody, and then you need just to be a good human being when you're on the job. And I know lots of great players whose phones don't ring because they're kind of assholes when they're on the job. But if you're a good human being and you play well with others and you listen, your phone will continue to ring. So every opportunity that you can put yourself in to be heard when you're that age, do it, you know. So
Yeah, that's such
that's
great
my
advice.
story.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. Well, if we don't have anything else, we can call it there. But DZ, Mr. Zerkel, all the names you go by, thank you so much for your
Oh,
time.
it's my pleasure, guys.
Yes.
It's an
Thank you so
absolute
much.
honor and a privilege
Thank
to
you.
be able just to listen to your wisdom and your funny humor and quips.
Oh, well, you guys, I hope that you have a great year. Andrew, good luck with your DMA auditions. I hope that everything goes well. Nick, enjoy your first year in Chicago. I know that it's going to be a great experience. When did school started late for you guys? You do quarters, right?
Yeah, we started on September 20th or 21st. So
Holy moly.
we started. I had a long summer though, so it was nice.
Yeah, good. And Sam, where are you in school right now? I know you're at Columbus, right?
Yeah, I'm at Columbus getting an artist diploma currently at the moment. First
Okay,
year.
great. Well, soak it all up, and please tell Dr. Avila I say hello when you see him.
Will do.
Yeah, and so I hope you guys do well, and I'll look forward to hearing about what's going on with you down the road. I'll look for you on the Facebook.
Oh, wonderful.
Don't look too far on Facebook.
Oh, no. Don't read the comments.
That's great. All right, thank you so much.
All right, guys.
Great chatting with you.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.